Thank you all so much for coming out and joining us again. We have much better weather this year than we did last year, amen? But I want to kick off today the Franklin Florence Civil Rights Park and Community Work Fund event for this year. We have a great keynote speaker who came all the way up here from New York City. And I'll be your hosting and MC today, Adrian Hale. For those of you who know me from my work at the Chamber of Commerce, others from my recently elected role as a New York State Board of Regents representing this district, the 7th JD for New York. So I'm happy to be here. I'll try to keep you all as entertained as possible, and hopefully you'll be able to walk away with a sense of urgency and emergency to really go out into the world and do the work that desperately needs to be done. You know, with this being an election year, there's a lot of focus and emphasis on politics, but politics is every day, amen? Politics is how we treat each other, where we go, what we value, and how we embody those values, and who we decide to be. And I can tell you as a regent who oversees all of the school districts, 72 school districts in these 8 counties, 10 charter schools, every independent college and university, that we need folks to pay a special attention to our children. That some of them are getting access and opportunity to actualize and become their best selves, while others have a hope and a prayer that they may have a life better than their parents and the ones they were born into. And I hate to say it, but right now I would argue that we're living in a time where no one is fully committed to fixing and improving systems for young Black and brown children. And that's not my opinion, that's the facts. I can take you to the countless schools and classrooms I'm in every single day, and I have rural districts, suburban districts, and our urban districts, and I see the disparity in real time. Some classrooms where children are learning, and others where it's difficult just to get a classroom under control and to get their attention. But I'm not gonna belabor that point. We're gonna spend a lot of time today this afternoon, and we have a lot of speakers who are ready to get up here and talk to you all. So, without further ado, I want to switch it over to Reverend Myra, who's gonna come up here and give us a selection as we sing the Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
I have my staff passing out the words. If you're thinking, I would sing that if I had the words. Well, they're bringing them to you. If you need one, you can put your hand up, and Lydia and Tarza will pass those out to you. All right, you ready? Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven rings. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that tears have been watered. We have come treading the path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the bright gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into thy light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Amen. Amen.
Filled with the hope that the present has brought us. Amen. For a room like this just to exist, so many folks before us had to step out on faith and fight against the gravity of segregation and hatred and bigotry to afford us all a room like this. And we all have work to continue to do to ensure that the folks coming up behind us have a room in a world much better than the one that we all inherited. Amen? All right. Without further ado, I want to just take a time to give a word from SPARC's White Caucus. I'm going to ask them to come up to share some words of support.
Hi, everybody. It's really great to have everybody here. Thank you so much for coming out. I just wanted to talk. I'm a member of SPARC, I'm Mary Heaven-Smith, and I've been a member for about 7 or 8 years. And so the Spirit's Anti-Racism Coalition that Reverend Myra Brown founded some years before I joined it. And one of the ideas that she had that was just brilliant right at the start of the pandemic was that we begin to meet as a white caucus, that the white folks who are members of SPARC, instead of burdening our friends of color always with questions of, is this right, is this wrong, what should we know, we should study on our own and begin to look inward, examine our own biases, and share what what we were discovering. So twice monthly, we begin our SPARC meetings with a 45-minute White Caucus led by two out-of-town anti-racism authors and speakers and educators. And I can tell you, on behalf of all the White Caucus folks, it's really been a blessing. We realize that we've lived in a world that, you know, privileged us still does. We've discovered ways that we can use that for good, to stand up, to show up, to be there, to point out gaps in our knowledge, our education. And, you know, as we talk, we discover these aha moments and say, oh, wait, yeah, I grew up with that too. Let's fix that. And so we're still swimming in that water. We still have these blind spots. We know that. And we all know this will be a lifelong journey, but we try very hard in our White Caucus meetings to understand more deeply than we have ever before. So we just wanted to sort of point out that work. If any of you, there is also a Black Caucus that meets at the same time. So if anybody wants to join, you certainly are welcome to join us. We've learned a lot. We show up in different ways. We speak in different ways. We try to think in different ways, never losing the new knowledge, new awareness. And we support those of you who are still struggling through all of the mess that is, you know, the hate in this world. And we hope that we can be a force for good. So thank you.
And I want to commend the SPARC White Caucus for being willing to do that work, right? It's not easy to accept that you aren't the most informed or educated as it relates to the racial history of our country. And to accept that humility, to suspend your judgment, and to be willing to learn about how you can be a much better neighbor and a much better citizen. I applaud all of you all who are doing that work with SPARC. So give yourselves a round of applause for that. I want to take a second just to acknowledge some of the special guests that we have in the room today. I want to ask Brighton Town Board member Robin Wilt to just raise your hand or stand up. We also have Executive Director of the Baden Street Settlement House, Mrs. Kathy Thomas. We have New York State Assembly member Damon Meeks here today. We have our mayor, Malik Evans. And before I ask the mayor to come up, I just want to say a couple of words about him because he is no stranger to being on the front lines as it relates to trying to work hard to make things better for our youth. Before he was our mayor, he was the president of our school board, and he was the youngest member of the school board up until recently to ever be elected to fight for Rochester's children. And so I love the fact that we have a mayor right now who allows that experience to inform the way he crafts laws and policies over at City Hall to really make things better for Rochester's children. I think we all know it's no secret that we are known as a collective for too many of the wrong reasons. And I think up until recently, we haven't had the right people in certain roles and in certain seats to really work across the aisle, across the organization and different levels of government to move things forward. So without further ado, I want to give our mayor, Mr. Malik Evans, a couple of minutes to say a few words.
Now, I'm a preacher's kid and you put me in the pulpit. But I'm going to exercise the 5 B's of public speaking because you got a great speaker that came all the way from here from Queens, Brother Senator Sanders. So he will do most of the talking. But what I love about my role, and because I've just been around so long, I'm probably the oldest, youngest person you ever will meet, that I got a story for everybody. So it's so good to see. It's so good to see Adrian here, and Adrian probably doesn't remember the first time we met. You probably don't remember. But Adrian came to see me in my role at ESL Federal Credit Union, and he was getting ready, and he was concerned about issues in the community. He wanted to learn about the community. But it was on the eve of his graduation from Yale. I don't know if you remember that. And he was telling me things he wanted to do in the community, and now look where he stands as a member of the Board of Regents. Ain't God good? Look at that. I won't belabor my point, but my name should tell you a little bit about me. My name's Malik, I was supposed to be named after Malcolm X, but I had a cousin that was older than me, and my dad's twin brother took that, so he named me Malik. After Malcolm X, after he took his Hajj to Mecca, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz. My middle name is Delaney, Malik D. Evans. Martin Delaney was a contemporary of Frederick Douglass. He spent times walking the streets of Rochester. They worked on the North Star together. He had a paper called The Mystic. The reason why I'm telling you this is because the items that Brother Senator Sanders worked on is something that we talked about in my house back in the 80s when it was not popular. Back at a time when Reverend Myra, who worked very closely with my dad as a teenager, he probably would have got run out of town, mentioning the word reparations. So the fact that you have a state senator that has worked hard to get the promise of something that has been talked about a long time is important. Now, I'm a hip-hop head. I grew up during hip-hop, and one of my favorite artists was KRS-One. They called him the teacher. That was his nickname, KRS-One. He was the teacher. So as an elected official, I try to be the teacher. So I just want to make a couple of points because I like to give evidence of where we are, and I would urge all of you to read, go back and look. I have a subscription, and maybe you can even use my subscription. Go back and look at the New York Daily Tribune, a transcript from February 13th, 1865. That is very significant because on January 12th, 1865, at the Green Meldrum House, it was the first time that government officials had asked blacks what they wanted for themselves. And there were 20 black pastors that gathered at this house in Savannah, Georgia, as the Civil War neared the end. Subsequent to that meeting took place on January 12th. Then on January 16th, General Sherman, if you know your history, you know who General Sherman was. He fought during the Civil War. He was a big leader during the Civil War. He signed an order on January 16th, 1865 that said that 400 acres were supposed to be divvied amongst the folks that were coming out of enslavement. And of those 400 acres, each were supposed to get 40 acres. The mule was added later. But if you go back and read that transcript, you will see that they were told that they were going to get 40 acres and then the mule. Then something happened. At Ford's Theater, Mr. Lincoln was watching a play. You can go see the house in Washington, D.C., and Mr. John Wilkes Booth walked up behind him and put a bullet through his head. And you probably can guess what happened after that. That act was basically rescinded, and probably about a couple thousand blacks were able to take advantage of that, but not the masses, not the populace. And instead of us going from 40 acres to a mule, we moved to Jim Crow, segregation, sharecropping, and redlining. And then the nail in the coffin, ladies and gentlemen, because as I said, as an elected official, I like to be the teacher. The election of 1876. Anybody know what happened during the election of 1876? Samuel Tilden was up against by a guy by the name of Rutherford B. Hayes. And guess what happened? Someone said the election was disputed. It was a disputed election. It actually went to a commission, and they had to vote. The Republicans controlled the Senate, and I believe the Democrats controlled the House at the time. Sound familiar? And they fought for months to settle this election. And in the end, Samuel Tilden and his crew, which were the Democrats, said, we'll make a deal with you. In order for Rutherford B. Hayes to become president, we're going to have something called the end of Reconstruction. And it was called redemption. So they ended Reconstruction and redemption. So in a nutshell, I said all this stuff, but basically African Americans were sold out. They were sold out, and as a result, we are still bearing the fruit of that today. And me and my measly $600 million budget in the city of Rochester, we're trying to rectify some of this. We're working with the Black Community Focus Fund on a guaranteed basic income program in which we are looking at people that were in redline areas where we're giving them $500 a month, $6,000 a year, but that is nearly enough. My Buy the Block program looks at redline areas in which we are building new homes. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a long way to go, and what Senator Sanders has put together allows us to talk about this from a systemic policy standpoint. I give that history because folks need to understand that of all of our greatest rewards, history is our greatest teacher, and we need to know where we got to where we are. And I want to end with a quote by Frederick Douglass. In one of his most famous lectures, entitled Self-Made Men, delivered to an audience all over the country in the vernacular at this time, so I'm going to use the word Negro. We don't say Negro now, we say black folks, but back then they said Negro up until the Civil Rights Movement. He said, the nearest approach to justice to the Negro for the past is to do him justice in the present. The former slave, he said, had performed the task of making bricks without straw. Now, give him the straw. Now give him the straw. Now the question is how do you give the straw? And we can engage in all of the philosophical debates on how you give the straw, but we got a lot of ideas on how you can give the straw. The question is, how do we get no longer the Negro, blacks, those straws that were guaranteed over 155 years ago today? Thank you, Senator Sanders, for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for those remarks. And I will be remiss if I didn't follow that up with a passage from the Kerner Commission, which was a commission assembled by President Lyndon Johnson. This report is a product of an executive order. And the introduction says, this is our basic conclusion. So obviously, Reconstruction is over. Jim Crow is running rampant. The president and the White House is trying to figure out where are all of these riots coming from. So this commission, in the intro, it says, this is our basic conclusion. Our nation is moving toward two societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal. The next page, and this is what really took me out hearing your remarks, Mr. Mayor, is what white Americans have never fully understood, but what the Negro can never forget, is that white society is deeply implicated in the ghetto. White institutions created it, white institutions maintain it, and white societies condone it. And the work that we're all doing here today is understanding that when he talks about what happened with Rutherford B. Hayes and the abrupt ending to Reconstruction, the message was figure it out. And now we all see firsthand that the figuring it out didn't really happen. And we put so much responsibility on individuals to overcome hundreds of years of intentional, curated oppression. So thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, for your remarks. Give him another hand. Our next speaker, Mr. Assemblyman Damon Meeks, is going to come up here and share a few words. But before Damon does, I love that he represents another historical piece of the progressive puzzle. Unions, labor. And there were so many folks like A. Philip Randolph and Melvin Tolson and folks who came up from the black community to try to organize and mobilize black voices, efforts, and will to combat the gravitational forces of hatred and oppression. And Damon, who long before he was an assembly member, did so much work in the community mobilizing and organizing. I want to give him a couple minutes to come up here and share some words with you all.
Good afternoon. I am Assemblyman Damon Meeks, representing the 137th. I want to say first, let me give an honor to God and to the pastor of this fine institution, Pastor Myra Brown, Uh, So I'm really elated that we have my brother Senator Sanders here in Rochester once again, and I'm looking forward to getting out of his way. But one of the things I want to say that as a community, we must be intentional in having conversations about the truth and about our history. Growing up here in the city of Rochester, coming from humble beginnings, lived over on Reed Park off of Hudson Avenue, and eventually moved over to the 19th Ward. And it's funny because when you run for office, some of the different things that you hear people say, and it's just like, well, what's the relevance of that? And I've heard people make comments like, well, he don't know struggle because he's from the west side. He can't relate to the east side. And, I often push people to go back and understand and know your history and how we came to Rochester. And it wasn't by way of this great migration that we would often read about in our history books. When we made it to Rochester, we weren't given these great opportunities. People fled the South. Many of them fled because of terrorism. Organizations such as the KKK. I remember having a talk with my predecessor, David Gant, and he told me how he landed in Rochester. And he said it was one day he was out playing and a young white kid called him the N-word. So he said he immediately punched the kid and knocked him down, and he went home. And he told his mom what happened. He said before nightfall, they were the next thing smoking, coming to Rochester, because his mom told him, if we don't leave now, they're going to kill you. So when a lot of our families came here, we lived in the northeast of Rochester. We didn't work in Kodak, Xerox, Boston Lawn. We lived in the northeast, and we would take buses, trucks. However we got there, we would make it to the east of Rochester. We would go out to Williamson, Sodas, and work the fields and canning plants. And others had the opportunity to work as domestics over on the east end of Rochester. So I say that to share that we come from humble beginnings. And if it had not been for Franklin D. Florence and the fight movement and the fight that they put forth, we would have never stepped foot in Kodak. But they fought and they advocated to assure that we had such an opportunity to work for corporations such as Kodak. And it wasn't just simply getting in the door. It was a constant fight to advocate for our rights. And that fight didn't stop back then in the 60s. That fight still continues today. Some of us work for some of these grand institutions that our everyday working class folks have to fight against to make a living wage. And I'm proud to say that I stood on the strike line with the union members of 1199 SEIU as they went up against the University of Rochester to assure living wages and quality health benefits. So I just want to encourage you all to seek that history, know the history, and share the history. I'm glad that we, again, have Senator Sanders here. I'm one who is intentional in building relationships throughout the state legislature. I'm a member of the Assembly. This brother is in the Senate. I've had the honor to go down to Queens, New York, and actually tour and just learn some things. And I remember meeting you and Khalil at a school there in Queens, actually your alma mater. And we're having a conversation about the millions of dollars that were secured for a new program at the school. And I'm like, well, hold on. When we left out, I said, well, I know you all work to secure the money, but you actually have input at the table? So you darn right. And I'm like, wow, that was never the story in Rochester. So I say that to say that, like, you live, you grow, and you learn. And I want to say thank you for being a mentor and teaching me some things in this space. And I look forward to learning more in order to do more for this community of Rochester that I love and serve. Thank you all. God bless you.
It's funny that the assembly member mentioned folks who lived out some, because I'm actually the first Rochesterian in my family, me and my siblings, actually born here. My mother is from about an hour south, a town called Mount Morris. My dad is from about an hour west from a small town called Medina. And we grew up countrified. So even though we grew up in the hood wasn't in our house. We lived in a country house where work ethic and education and things of that nature were prioritized. So he's right, a lot of black folks couldn't even live in Rochester because there was no access to work here. So you had to live out some and work in the salt mines like my grandfather and help build buildings and colleges like Geneseo and so on and so forth. So thank you so much, Assembly Member, for that. Now, is our dancers here? Okay. So I got a treat for you all right now. The talking is going to cease for just a little bit, and you're going to get to see a performance. I want to ask Zareel Williams, School of Arts and Dance major from A Silhouettes Movement Dance Company, to come up and share a number with us all. Thank you so much for that. You did an excellent job. Give her another round of applause. Wasn't that much better to listen to us talk? All right. Back to the program now. The break is over. I'm going to ask Katrina Florence to come up on behalf of the Florence family and please share a few words. She is Minister Franklin Florence's granddaughter. Please give it up for Katrina Florence.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Katrina Florence. I am the granddaughter of Minister Franklin Florence. And first and foremost, I would like to thank God for allowing me to be present in front of you all today. I bring you many greetings from my family, in which I would like to thank for entrusting me to be here and represent on their behalf. We are just elated and so proud of the work being done by Reverend Brown and everyone at SPARC, and all of you for being here and your support for this wonderful organization and the Minister Franklin D. Florence Civil Rights Heritage Park. My grandfather passed away a year ago this month, and I was so happy he was able to see and participate in the revealing of the park before his passing. He was so proud, yet still very humbled, and Granddaddy was not the one to care much about accolades, because he knew everything that was ever done was just simply done because it was the right thing to do. Since his birth, he was destined for a cause bigger than himself. You see, my grandfather was born during a time when our 35th president of the United States came into office, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. FDR came during a time where many lost their fortunes, and Roosevelt, through executive orders, transformed the economy, produced jobs, got people out of debt, and gave relief to the poor. It has such an impact on the Black community. At the time, my great-grandparents decided what a better name to name him after a president who relieved so many people who was hurting so bad. You see, that is how he received his name, Franklin D.R. Florence. Granddaddy grew up in the segregated South, saw so much oppression, and traveling across the South as a boy preacher, he relied heavy on his faith and love for Christ. In the late 50s, like so many other African Americans, my grandparents moved out of the South and they landed right here in Rochester, New York. When he got here, he quickly noticed there's not really a difference in the struggle from the South to the North. African Americans during that time were primarily only living in two sections of the city. He saw a lot of poverty, high unemployment rates, police brutality, a failing education system, discrimination in housing, and that's just to name a few. Granddaddy wanted to make Rochester a better place where systemic racism is called out and dismantled so that your children and my children can have a better education. Our families have a decent and proper place to live and call home, along with equal and fair employment opportunities. To accomplish what he was able to do, he had to fight. And he never stopped. He was always making a difference in someone's life, providing housing and employment opportunities for families, going to visit schools because students were having difficulties, feeding and clothing those in need in the community, visiting the jails and saving souls through preaching the word of Christ. It never stopped. And it is our job to make sure this legend's legacy lives on in this community. There are certain sites that hold special meaning for each of us, places where we have learned about ourselves and our values and which have shaped our interests, passions, and in some cases, our careers. The Minister Franklin D. Florence Civil Rights Heritage Park will be that place for this community, a place of respite, and it will represent what we all should seek. We know the importance of having a connection to something, and this park will allow us to be taught and offer a lifelong connection to something meaningful, something grand and something we can become a part of and that may become a part of us. All these things are important to us as a family and as members of this community. We want to be able to share our truth with our children and our children's children. We do not want to forget whose shoulders we are standing on. We do not want to forget who fought the good fight for us to be where we are today. And yes, we still have some work to do, but that is our continued fight. And it will not stop until every barrier is lifted. Thank you for all your support. Continue to keep my family in your prayers as I do the same for yours. And remember, never give up the fight. Thank you.
Katrina, on behalf of this community, we thank your family for the work that they've done to bring us this far. And I think the best way we can say thank you is by continuing that work and what we all are called to do in our own respective places and spheres of influence, amen? It was folks like Minister Florence that also made this room possible. And even in my role as regent, folks like Dr. Walter Cooper, who was one of his contemporaries, who made this role possible to see a young black man from Rochester representing this entire region on the highest educational board in this state. So thank you to your family and the work that you all are doing. Now I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Myra, who's going to come up and give a quick introduction on the speaker. But before I do, let me tell you something I know about this man, Senator James Sanders. I got the privilege of meeting Senator Sanders years ago when I was still in my capacity at the Chamber of Commerce, when he came up to tour some of our financial institutions, trying to figure out how we can create more inclusion in the banking system. And it was then that first I was taken aback by this leader from downstate who had an interest in how to make sure some of the work that they were doing down there was also affecting folks up here where we live. Too often, and you all know this, New York is bifurcated into two states, downstate and upstate. And there might be advances and wins in downstate, that the upstate cities of Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse, Albany, Utica, you name it, we don't get to always touch and feel. And for him to come up here and take the time out for, I think it was 2 or 3 days he came up here, and he also walked the streets with me. I took him by some of my family members' house on Avenue D, Clinton, so he could really see the Rochester behind downtown. Yeah, I'm from the east side of mine. For those of y'all who don't know, in Rochester black communities, there's an east side, west side rivalry, okay? That's right. But Senator Sanders came over and saw some of Rochester's most challenged neighborhoods with me from where I grew up. Got to meet some members of my family. And I knew then that this was someone to get to know. Like the assembly member said earlier, relationships are important when you're trying to move this work. Now, on top of that, we both were also Marines, hoorah. And it's that same sense of service and duty that he had in the Marines that I believe he brings now to the New York State Senate. And to take on a fight as such as reparations, not only is it important to take that fight on in this country, but we also, as New Yorkers, aren't fully aware of our particular history and role in the institution of transatlantic slavery, okay? So I want to get out of the way and let Reverend Myra come up here and do the senator's introduction, but we are privileged to have someone who is willing to take on this fight. Obviously, you know, whenever you take on a fight that threatens systems, you get a lot of backlash, a lot of heat, but so did Ruby Bridges. So did the Freedom Riders. And so did the abolitionists who felt the anxiety and fear of having runaway slaves in their basements and closets at a time when the Fugitive Slave Act could have deputized any white person to have to turn them in. You can't do this work without courage. And we are fortunate to have a man of courage in our midst today. And so I'll let Reverend Myron get up here and do his intro. But we're lucky to have you, Senator Sanders.
What a wonderful, wonderful opportunity this is to be together, amen? Couple of things that you don't know about me. One is that I am the daughter of Black migrant farm workers who were brought here from Arkansas to work the farm and the migrant camp in Albion, New York, which is where I was born. I came here when I was Orleans County, that's right. I came here when I was 4 years old, so this is my hood, this is my tribe. I grew up here. The other thing you don't know about me is that I am the granddaughter of a sharecropper. My grandmother used to tell me this story. She said, you know, when I was working those fields and picking that cotton, I picked 400 pounds of cotton in 1 week. And at the end of the week, all they gave me was $4. So my grandmother and I, at some point, I kind of did the math for her, and we looked it up. Turns out she should have actually been given $20 at the end of that week. And so year after year after year after year, my grandmother was cheated from this additional $16 that she was owed. And fast forward to the end of her life when she died, we had to send out a request in the family for money to bury her because we didn't have enough. And it didn't take long to connect those dots, right? If my grandmother had been given her money, right, she could have been put away and had a different kind of life even than what she ended up having. And so I had no idea that years later that God would call me to the work of leading people in dismantling racism, the same system of racism that put its foot on the neck of my grandmother and my mother and my father, and that continues to put its foot on the neck of those in our human family. And so it's an honor and it's sacred work for me to be called to this work. The conversation about slavery and reparations in New York State is long overdue. We tend only to think of the South when we think of slavery, but New York was not exempted from it. This land was bought by Nathaniel Rochester from money that was made off the back of Black slaves. The forestry and the swamps were drained and cleared by enslaved Black people. Slavery in New York State didn't end until 1825, far after most of our systems in New York and Rochester were created, which means there were no people of color at the table, creating the blueprint of how service is provided, public safety is provided, healthcare is delivered, financial systems function, or transportation happens, etc. And so we need to have this conversation about reparations, and we need to have the conversation about changing the blueprints of our systems so that they work for everybody. SPARC and BCFF, Black Community Focus Fund, has engaged in telling the story of the Black freedom struggle through the creation of the Minister Franklin D. Florence Civil Rights Park in partnership with the city of Rochester. You know, so much of our history is told from the perspective of the powerful and the privileged. But we intend to tell the story from the perspective of the powerless, the subjugated, and the oppressed, who courageously carved a path to their own liberation by the grace and mercies of God and the allies in the work of liberation. So SPARC and Spiritus Christi and Black Community Focus Fund are engaged in the work of dismantling racism to right-size our world. But we can't do it alone. We engage each of you as partners in this work to build a community of resistance, a community of allies, and even a community of co-conspirators to create new blueprints of how we work with each other more justly, more equitably, and new ways to care for one another as part of this human family. Are you in? Amen. So with no further ado, I want to introduce our speaker today, Senator James Sanders, Jr., currently in his 6th term, New York State Senator, was elected by the people of the 10th Senatorial District to the New York State Senate on September 13, 2012. A fiercely devoted public servant, community advocate, Marine veteran, and family man, Senator Sanders' life is defined by his work to uplift others. The actions he has taken over the course of his career emphasizes the importance of promoting education, innovation, working class families, and economic development throughout New York. Senator Sanders currently represents the neighborhoods of Breezy Point, Jacob Riis Park, Roxbury, Neponset, Bell Harbor, Rockaway Park, Rockaway Beach, Broad Channel, Howard Beach, Arverne, Far Rockaway, Wavecrest, Edgemere, Bayswater, Rosedale, South Ozone Park, Jamaica, Richmond Hill, Springfield Gardens, Rockdale, Briarwood, Laurelton, and St. Albans. I got tired just reading that. He has sponsored monumental legislation protecting New Yorkers and has been at the forefront of his endeavors towards a more equitable and just world. Senator Sanders acknowledges that the journey forward is never easy, but he's willing to take the difficult path if it means that those he serves will be afforded the protections and access to the resources that they deserve. Please help me welcome Senator James Sanders, Jr.
When you hear all of that, I keep looking around for who this worthy person is, and then at the end of that, they say my name, and Brother Meeks kind of pushed me forward, so I went up here. I was looking for a much better person than me, but you're gonna have to make do with what you got. I've been doing it, so join in. Giving honor to God for being here, to the Reverend Dr. Brown, who is the mastermind of so many different things and that you know of and some that you don't. I would be less than a person if I didn't say that the body of Christ has made me felt very welcome here. It's good that I am here. To our esteemed mayor, and sometimes you don't know what you have. The ideas that he is kicking around are worthy. The nation could really do well if well, don't tell him yet. Let's keep it up here for a while, and then give it to my community. Well, don't tell him yet. To my colleague, the assembly person who's has many different talents, and I was speaking of the economic ones with him, but I did have to bring a report. My eyes have seen some things, and his dance moves that I must admit. Now, it's not jealousy. Well, I forgot where I am. Or maybe it is jealousy, but it's not that, well, it's a lot of jealousy. And I have told him that I could do the same moves. I could do the splits that he can. No, I can. I just can't get back up. Getting down there is easy. You all call the law to help me get back up. So I will stay in my lane. So therefore I do not embarrass the good people of my district. We're showing that the good Lord has given me many talents, but dance is not one of them, brother. It's not one of them. Neither is singing, but that's one step at a time. I would be remiss if I did not draw your attention to a man who's always had my back, the Marine in here, the Regent. Now, y'all, man, I tell you, that is such an important role. I mean, to take care of a couple of kids is one thing, but to put yourself out there and say that you are going to look out for all children, black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American, whatever, and you're going to treat them all well, man, that's quite the task. May you be successful in it. Now, I'm going to try to do some stuff here, and I'm going to try to prove that knowledge does reign supreme over everyone. KRS-One for y'all who, that's all right. They did not go to hippology before you came here. Well, that's all right. There's still time. There's still time. We'll get a break dancer out of you yet. Let's see. I'm supposed to. Oh, first I got to tell you that I was told that somebody in here told me that if I made, in fact, I think it was you. The brother was kind enough to drive me around and make sure I don't get lost out here. That's our job now. I think he told me that if I came back to Rochester 2 more times, I'd have to buy a home here. I'm sure that some of the people in my district may give me the money for it. Well, we won't tell them then. I'm supposed to, any good speaker's supposed to tell you a little about themselves. And after you heard all of that they said about me, I should stop while I'm ahead. Well, everything there was to say has been said, but I didn't say it. So I will tell you a little bit about myself. I've lots of titles, lots of awards, but the thing that's the most important that I want you to remember is that I'm Sister Lois's son. I was born practically in the church. My earliest memories are playing tag under these fine, not this one, of course, under these fine seats. And you could play a real good game of tag. Well. Until 16, I was going to be a pastor. Now, don't ask me what happened. That's a different story for a different time. You have to bring me back to Rochester for that story. I was born in the Hamels houses. I was born in the projects, my friends. But I'll say that again. I was born in the Hamels houses. I was not born in a hospital. There was no midwife. There was just my Alabama mama and me. No man, black or white, slapped me. My mother made up for it. But that's a different story for a different day. One story at a time. My father was a sharecropper. It didn't end that long ago. My father was a sharecropper. He was taken out of the South to go fight in World War II, and he had sense enough not to go back. My mother, a domestic. My father was taken out of school in the 3rd grade so he can enrich folk. And so I come from the peasantry. I come from the bottom, my friends. I come from a place that we're, my brother, we are not 5th generation Yale. We are 1st generation not in jail. 1st generation. May it continue. I'm trying. We are very humble, and we believed in God. We believed in the church, and my father brought the South with him when he went north, and he tried to raise chickens in New York City way before all of this organic stuff. And Brother Assemblyman Meeks, when your last name is Sanders and your father is raising chickens, you are going to be one fighter when it comes to school. So yes, I spent a great deal of my time in the principal's office. There I go at it again. Well, I was a bad kid. Now, my daughter tells me there are no bad kids. Nonsense. Nonsense. I was a bad kid. I've thrown chairs at teachers. I've done all of the trouble stuff that you would do. I was a troubled child indeed. But the good Lord in his majesty had a path that I did everything that I could to get out of. I tried every single thing to move away from that path, and the more that I moved away, the next thing I know, the path is there. Wait a minute, I left that path over there. Next thing I know, it's right there. I would go into places that I should be ashamed of to tell you about, and people would come to me and say, "What are you doing here?" I'm sorry. I'm here for the same sin that you're here for. In fact, more of it. And they would ask me, "What am I doing here?" And, one or two would tell me, "You really don't need to be here." And that, when you're young and quite, I almost said stupid. Let me see, I can't say that. When you have not come unto yourself yet, you don't want to hear that. That's exactly the opposite of what you're trying to hear. Man, I'm down. I've done more whatever y'all are doing than all of y'all, and you telling me I don't need to be here. After a while, you get used to that. and you understand that God has a purpose. He's moving, he's doing something, he's up to something. We may not know what it is, but he's up to something. And that's why, and you're wondering, Reverend Doctor, I'm gonna bring it back. Give me a minute now. Don't. No, I heard him pray and preach, Lord. Let him remember that what he's supposed to be speaking about. Your prayers have been answered, sister. You see, I believe in a God of laughter, a God of love, a God who sits high, but he does look down. And in the Jewish tradition, they have a saying that says, man plans, but God laughs. Now, in the Quran, they have another one, very similar. It says, man plans and God plans, but God is the greatest of planners. So his plan has brought me here, and I'm going to get to that subject, and I'm going to get to it right now. Is that all right? I'm going to get to it right now. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that, I am a city, country, city kind of guy. I was born in New York City, raised from people. My father is coming out of Darlington, South Carolina, which is near Florence, which is near Lamar, which is near nothing. I mean, that's what I can tell you, my friends. We couldn't even be good by Charleston, at least something. No, Darlington. So I'm going to start by telling you of one of the greatest Americans that has ever lived, and we really need to pay more attention to. I wish that we knew more about him. And that, of course, is William Lloyd Garrison, who I would argue you are in the tradition. He was known as one of the most militant abolitionists. He was a white man at the time who at a time said he was not going to stand by for things evil taking place right in his midst. Oh, the exit's that way. They usually start walking out earlier. I'm glad of that. All right, I got a whole minute in before folk left. The last person got to close that door. It's cold outside. William Lloyd Garrison, who, when he was speaking, I mean, he was a man of such militancy, a man of such stature and demeanor, and he stood against the evil of his time of slavery, and he stood, and it almost cost him his life twice. He was beaten and left for dead twice. Beaten to that point, but he crawled back out and he stood for justice at a time when it was very unpopular. And one of his greatest quotes, they gave me a truncated version of it. You really treat yourself right and read his quote. I'm even going to put my spectacles on to read it. He said, I will be as harsh as the truth and as uncompromising as justice. I am in earnest. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will not retreat a single inch, and I will be heard. William Lloyd Garrison. They don't make men like that anymore. So, first thing I want you to know is that if we're talking about reparations, it's already been done. Reparations had been given out. It just was given to the wrong people. It was. 1862, reparations were paid to all slaveholders in the northern states. Everybody who owned a slave was paid for it. Not the slaves, mind you. So reparations, if we're talking about, it's never been done, of course it's been done. We just want equal time here. So I was hearing, and I'm a historian masquerading as a politician, and getting away with it. And I was hearing about the Reconstruction and the death of Reconstruction, and I want you to remember that this was one of the most bloody events in American history. This did not happen easy. Nobody just surrendered quickly. Massacres of black and white took place. Anyone who stood for the Union cause was massacred, and the Northern government turned its back on an incredible period, and may it never happen again. So we can look at the history that we find ourselves in and see parallels to where we are then and now. Great parallels. A little further down. So under those conditions, we have to make sure that our history does not repeat itself. One writer said that history repeats itself twice. Once in tragedy, the second in farce. So we can look at the things around us and certain people running around and the end of affirmative action and things of that nature, and see the farce of what's going on. That if we speak of ourselves as one nation, under God even, imagine that. The arrogance of people saying one nation under God. That by itself is tough. Because God, you know, he has a vote in this too. He has a final one, as a matter of fact. So if we are going to call ourselves a nation under God, and I believe that we have been called to be a nation and called to recognize God, then we need to urgently look and see what are the things that we can do to end this gap. First, what is the gap? I bear you a bad tiding to tell you that the gap between black and white is as large as it was in 1965 and getting worse. We're going in the wrong direction, and we're going fast, my friends. Wealth is changing. Wealth, it used to be a home. Wealth is changing. Now we're looking at equities. Now we're looking at stocks and bonds. Now we're looking at other things. And that is in white hands even more than homes. And homes is we're in bad shape. So under those conditions, the dividing line of this great nation is splitting further, faster and faster. I went up to the head of it, and as you may or may not know, I am the chair of banking for New York State, for the state senate. And that says something good about our country, my friends, that a peasant's son can be the head of banking for New York State. Now, and that clap, I would appreciate if it was for America, where at the end of the day, I am a patriot. I am a patriot, and people sometimes confuse people who make criticisms and say, oh, they're not patriotic. Well, Martin Luther King, the Reverend Doctor, weighed in on this one, and he said, people say that I greatly criticize this country. It is true. But I have to tell them that it's because I have a great love for this country. And only those with a great love can make a great criticism. So that's the spirit that I trust that everybody in here is with. That we make a great criticism because we have a great love, and that love propels us to be better. To be better than this. So I asked the head of the Federal Reserve, one of the heads of the Federal Reserve, and that's the banker's bank, and that's the biggest banks go there for their monies, to oversimplify it. I asked him, without reparations, is there any chance for blacks to catch up? Without batting an eye, without hesitating for a second, he said, no. There's absolutely no chance for this group to catch up. The math, you cannot find a math that will bring you to that. Maybe if every single man, woman, and child had 3 jobs, and did nothing but work, maybe. But short of that, and that can't be maintained. Your family would disappear under those conditions. You can't maintain that. And I do mean children too. You'd have to have every child over 5 doing it. That's how far the distance is and what is speeding up. We are at an incredible point where we have to think different as a nation. We have to find a way to bring equality of opportunity. Now, notice that. It did not say equality of results. Now, that would be fair, perhaps, but that's not what we're fighting for. We are fighting for equality of opportunity, an even starting place. That's all you're saying. I would argue that's supposed to be the American concept. A fair. That if anybody gets up there, works hard and pays their taxes and pushes himself, they'd have the fair chance. This is what we're talking about. Equality of opportunity. Nothing more, and we can take nothing less. Now, I need to give you an update on where we are in this state in terms of reparations. So, as you all know, I have been blessed to be the tip of the spear, and we have managed to do something incredible and create a commission. Now, a spear is an incredible thing, and it's a great honor to be a tip of the spear, but a tip of the spear without the spear has no strength. It's just a piece of metal sitting on the ground somewhere. This is why I'm grateful that our Assembly member Meeks and others have grabbed the spear and pushed it in a certain way. And I'm grateful that you guys have said, Sanders, since you are crazy enough to do this, you're going to be the tip. And we're going to keep pushing you until you get dull, and then we'll get a new tip. But I'm no means tired. So under those conditions, the commission is being created. Incredible. Second time in this nation that a state has done this. And it is being created. There will be 9 people chosen, 3 by the governor, 3 by the assembly, 3 by the state senate. And those 9 people will be commissioned to come up with recommendations. Now, they could say that nothing is warranted. It's possible. They could come back, and it's a fair commission, my friends. They could say, well, we looked at it, looks all right. It's possible. They could come back and say many things are warranted. But those 9 people will have to meet within 6 months, and that clock is already going. And after that, they will have 1 year so far to come up with a report. And during that time, they are going to make hearings all over the state. Now, you and I both know that if they don't start in Rochester, that it's not going to go right. It just won't be blessed. It won't be blessed. Now, you all don't want the spirit of Frederick Douglass coming in there, or one of his sons, Assemblyman Meeks, or the mayor coming in there and saying, now we're going to have to change this. And if that's not bad enough, I know we don't want our beloved pastor coming in there to talk, man. If I see her coming in, I'm going to tell her, man, y'all done messed up. Oh, it's going bad. It's going to get worse. Just say amen and let's go. We're on the way to Rochester. So we're going to meet all over the place, and we are going to have conversations large and small. and we are going to do some things. Now, I'm going to tell you 2 more things, and then I'm going to take on any question that you have. Now, be careful. Let me warn you. Do not ask me anything that you don't want to know, because I'm here to give it to you uncut. I'm going to tell you what the good Lord wants you to know. Now, you may not like that, and brother, I am reminded what the Native Americans have said when a person tells the truth. They said that the teller of the truth must ride a fast pony. So I have already figured out my exits, and if those are blocked, I'm going that way. Remember, I am a Marine. All I need is a drop of water, and Marines are good to go. So I'm going to tell you 2 more things, and then I'm going to see if any one of you has questions. And if you don't, I'm going to call on you. I told you I'm here to make trouble. I'm not coming all the way from the edge of the earth, Rockaways, Queens. The edge of the earth is really flat. Don't you take my water? Don't you take it? I'm bad. I don't care if you twice the size I am and 10 times better looking. Which brings me back here. Now, there is a difference, my friends, between state reparations and federal reparations. Get ready. There's a difference. What you can expect from a state and what you can expect from a federal government, or a city for that matter. Cities can do. Some people have said, hey, it shouldn't be state or city. It should just be the federal. Interesting. Interesting. A worthy argument is being made. They say, hey, man, you guys are going to weaken it. And the federal is going to say, well, they done gave some money, so we're out. Interesting. Well, I am reminded of a couple of things. It's the tax season. Everybody in here is going to pay their taxes, right? Raise your hand if you're not paying taxes. I didn't look over here. Let me try that again. Raise your hand if you're not paying taxes. Don't forget now. So under those, I'm glad everybody, I didn't look it back at me either. So under those conditions, taxes. Now, every once in a while, we get a refund. Anybody in there ever got a refund? All right. Anybody in there ever gave it to me? Strike that from the record. Now, when you get a refund, you may get a refund from the federal government, but you can also get a refund from the state government, and you can get a refund from the city. Sometimes they combine those last two, but you can get a refund from all 3. And so we should look at reparations. You can get a reparations from the federal government, the state, and the city. My own dear city, New York City, my God, if you've ever seen a city that has crimes against humanity in terms of slavery, that's New York City. That was the home of the insurance companies. They insured the slavery. That was the home of the markets that sold everything all over the place. Slavery probably could not have existed as it did without New York City. They built some of the ships that not only took the crops, but took the people. What a city. They absolutely need to do reparations, just as a city. Forget what everybody else does. New York City needs to get right. All right. State versus federal. All right. Now I discovered something, Brother Meeks. Now, I'm from the Rockaways. It took me a long time, while I was sitting down there, and I discovered that Rockaway has 9 letters, but so does Rochester. Both of them start with an R. I have to come back here 2 or 3 more times to get the rest. Both of these places have been called the place behind God's back. Well, maybe not you, but my part of town has been forgotten so much that people have forgotten to forget about us. That bad. This is the place, Rochester is the place where reparations needs to go first. Rochester. What better way to honor Frederick Douglass? He could have been in any city. He spent time in Europe, any city in the world. But he said there's something special about this place. I'm sure he meant the Rockaways. But he got his letters a little confused. Well, but he chose up here. There's something going on. The waters are troubled, Reverend Doctor. The waters are troubled, especially in Rochester. Waters are troubled. But you know what? That's when healing takes place. You're not healed with the status quo. You're healed when there's turmoil, when there's things taking place. That's when we see God moving the most. That's when we see the people of God moving the most, or should be. That's when the body of Christ, Corpus Christi, that's when the body of Christ can move the most and where the blessings take place. I would encourage you to make sure that reparations is true. I mean, I could have gone into and spoke of the biblical foundations of reparations. Oh, what a great sermon. I'm giving that one to you. The biblical foundations of reparations. Oh, the Bible is filled, especially the Old Testament. The New Testament has some also, but the biblical foundation of reparations, where we speak of the year of Jubilee. Oh, I can go there too now. I won awards for that. But I'm going to stay in my lane. And if you want to hear the rest, come out here tomorrow. All right. So, reparations. All right. Now, let me do this. I'm gonna throw a dream out to you, and then I'm going to see if you have any questions. Let me see if I could do this. One second. What does reparations look like to you? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Every audience is one wise guy up here. Now, since you raised the issue, to me, I am more interested in generations to come than I'm interested in the generations here. To me, I would do a couple of things. I would say anybody who's over 65 and who's qualified, mind you, I'm going to give you $20,000. Go with God. May you use it well. May it do wonderful things for you. Okay. And to anybody who's under 65, now I lost the vote of just about everybody in here. I'm going to give you $2,000. And I'm going to say, use it the best you wish. Then I'm going to say to them, well, I got your attention. Then I'm going to say to them, if you want real money, you got to be in a classroom that teaches you how to own a home and keep it, how to own a business and keep it, and things of that nature. Then if you pass those courses, I will help you buy a home and buy a business and things of that nature, because we are speaking of generational wealth and we are not speaking of immediate dollars or any of that other stuff. We're speaking generational. We're trying to get not you, but your kids and those kids and the kids after that out of here. Whatever you get is symbolic. It's what is happening for them that is what's the most important. Wait, I got one more. All right. All right, Sandy. You such a smart guy. I got one for you. How are we going to prove who's black? Everybody from Europe is going to suddenly claim that they're black. How are we going to prove who's black and who's not? Never did like that guy. All right, my friends. Meet me after. It's kind of easy. It's not that difficult. There's two ways of proving it. Very easy. The first is some type of DNA test. Let the scientists figure out all of that. Let them do that. But the second way, I must admit, I like the most. We're going to look and see what you declared on your census. And we're going to look for the last 12 years. Now, if you were black 12 years ago, welcome, brother. Come on in. If you were not black 12 years ago, welcome, brother. Come on in. But you sit on that side. You ain't getting what this side gets. But you are welcome in. Welcome. We welcome all. We don't pay all. So I could go on. My friends, this not that difficult. People are going to try to make it sound so complex. Oh, it can't be figured. Oh, these things. Oh, Lord. Of course it can. Of course it can. And I'm looking for, I really hope that somebody could give me a question that stumps me. She can. Oh, yes, you can. Look at that. Smile if you're much smarter than me. Oh, man, everybody in here started smiling. So under those conditions, we are going to have all of those things. I'm surprised I didn't lose you earlier. I'm surprised. So under those conditions, it's good to see you, sir. Button up, man. Y'all got some weather up here. Take it with you, too. So under those conditions, my friends, I think that it is time to take on and see if you have any question, comment, or statement. And if they're real hard, you give it to him. And if they will make you look good, you give them to me. Is there here's a hand. I see one back there. No, I don't like his question. He got a tough question. But take that mic back. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you so much for coming to Rochester and sharing the details of this legislation. We just came this morning from the Monroe County Democratic Committee Designating Caucus. Whole high school auditorium of adoring Democrats coronating our local delegation. And one of the folks who got designated this morning was your colleague, Senator Jeremy Cooney. Could you comment on where he's at on this legislation?
Every Democrat in the conference, in Democratic conference, signed on to the legislation, sir, including Senator Cooney. I'm pleased to say. I think the person back there, and then up here. Is it an easy question? Now, if it's real easy, it makes me look good. I want her to go first.
You're going to look great.
But I'll take yours first. Yes, ma'am. In the back. Not yet. Yes, ma'am. Either yell or push the button. Some people do both.
Hello, can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
Okay, perfect. So, a question about reparations and exclusions. Is there any conversation about exclusion of reentry populations or those with felonies or those involved in the criminal justice system?
Well, there are conversations on exclusion. The question becomes, but we looking at it a little different. Not so much the justice system as there's an argument over what is called blood lineage versus harm-based. All right. Blood lineage versus harm-based. The argument is only those who were here before 1865 and can prove their lineage are eligible for reparations in the U.S. They should get reparations, but they should get it from wherever their country was. Very worthy argument. Then the other side is harm-based. They have pointed out that the harm did not stop at 1865. That you went from chattel slavery to sharecropping, which is another type of American apartheid, from 1865 to 1965. And then from 1965 to today, you've been in a different type of oppression. So there are arguments, both sides have worthy arguments. These are very good arguments, and the people wage them very well. The commission will have to tackle that and speak to who is eligible and who is not, and worthy things. Now, I have some ideas, of course, but you didn't ask that, so I didn't answer that. Thank you for your question. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. First of all, do I understand when the VA bill was passed that it was left up to the states to determine who was eligible? Do I know that to be true?
The commission will determine who is eligible, and then that will be, and here's the last part of this. After the commission rules, it goes to the state. So ultimately, you're right. It goes to the state to be voted on.
No, I don't think, my
Oh, then
question
I
is
stand-
the original VA bill.
Oh, the
after
VA
World War
bill.
II.
Ah.
Okay, how did New York State choose to administer that bill?
It did administer it locally. It had regional councils in New York.
Was it fair? I mean,
They couldn't spell fair.
yeah.
They wouldn't have known fair if it hit them upside the head.
So will that enter into reparations?
It should and could. It is one of the factors. There are so many ways that this group, the African American, has been cheated. It's an ingenious system that has cheated these folk in ways large and small. It's like several demons got together and sat down and came up with stuff. But we know it wasn't. We know it was people, most of them, doing what they thought was right. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. They were acting from the knowledge that they had. They were acting from the ignorance of their age. And they acted, and most of them believed that they were doing what was right. Where in the Bible does it say each man did what he thought was right in his own eyes?
Judges.
Woo! Man, I thought it was the first part. I'm going to keep him around. And under those conditions, most of the people did what they thought was right, but their thinking was some of the most horrific, horrible thinking that the world has had. They were upholding an ungodly system. And ultimately, God grew tired of that and created the people that moved against that, including the people in this room. Uh-oh. No, she has a follow-up now. Brother, she was just setting me up. No, that was just here's the layup.
No. That is a philosophical statement.
Yes.
There have to be statistics that show whether or not an African American, now black veteran, was able to get a VA loan like my dad and probably the dad of many people here.
Yes.
So do we know how New York State interpreted the VA loan, and were black veterans treated fairly?
We will have scholars. We're going to put out contracts where some of the best scholars in the nation will look at issues like this. The VA loans that my father did not get, the VA loans, and what would that do? First we're going to have historical scholars who are going to go into the different ways that this group was robbed. Then we're going to have economists who are going to quantify how much was that worth in today's dollars. A very complex process that's going to take place. But I have been in touch with some of the leading firms on this one. I tell you, but I don't want you to tell anybody, right? It'd be between us. There's a firm, an international group of economists that they make a lot of money, and they did a study, they just did a study for the UN, and on reparations for Africa and the Caribbean, etc. We're in touch with that firm, and we are quantifying how much all of this is really worth. We are going to hand you a document, second to none, that if you look at it through math and science and reason and morality, this document will be better than anything that we've ever produced. This is New York, and we are going to do it right. And then we're going to quantify all of this in today's dollars. Let's be clear. Let me be clear. For one, it is impossible to quantify the murder of a human being. You can come up with some approximations, but you can never take in the harm that it did and the harm that you can't quantify rape and robbery of different type. You could do some of these things it will be symbolic, but it must be substantial. But at the end, it will not be anywhere near what it should be. It will be substantial, but it might end up being, pennies on the dollar as compared to what is. But we are also, now my other hat is the hat of government. We're also trying to run a state, and we're not trying to bankrupt a state. We're trying to be responsible. We're not trying to bankrupt the state. We have a state to run. But I'll stop there because she has a question.
I don't envy your position of trying to produce reparations and also not bankrupt the state. I'm segueing away. Have you figured out the 9 people that are going to be on the commission? And also, the word influence keeps going about my head. If there's people out there with a lot of money and they see it not the way you see it, they're going to want to destroy this project. So how are you going to take care of influence?
Well, that allows me to speak of it. Have these 9 been chosen? I would say that at least 6 have been chosen that I know of. And we're quickly closing in. They may have been chosen by this moment. So if anybody is interested, this is your moment. Put it in quickly. Now, imagine for a moment I were a high-ranking government official, higher ranking, and I was against this process. Now, in New York, we're not as clear as it is down south. Down south, if they don't like you, they will let you know in no uncertain terms. You know where you stand. In fact, you know where you don't stand. Up here, we smile a lot. We may hate you even worse than down south, but we smile more. So there may be people smiling with us and have every intention on hanging and crucifying this bill, making sure it doesn't happen. Here's some of the weaknesses of this bill, of this law. It doesn't have a budget. It doesn't have a budget, which means that it is beholden to the governor. Now, if we had a bad governor who did not like this process, she or he, I'm glad it's not Cuomo. This is exactly what he would have did. He would damn it with false praise. He would say such good things and then he wouldn't fund it. Or he would give it so little money that it's DOA. It's already dead. It can't function. And then he would do worse. Okay, let me take it back. I'm sorry, former Governor Cuomo. I'm sure he's a great guy. Let me not use him in this example. I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure his family loves him. So under those conditions, you would make sure that it doesn't have enough money, and then you would make sure that the money gets to it slow. Slow. Remember, you're playing against the clock. They have to put in a report within a year. All you got to do is hold up on the money, give it in the 10th month. Oh, here's it. That way they can't say you never gave them money. There's money. Now they got 2 months to do what they couldn't have done in a year. There's a lot of games to play here. We are no means out of the woods. The struggle just begins. However, we have a secret weapon. We have 2 secret weapons. The first one is a God who knows the hearts of people. And nobody had figured out how to hoodwink God. When he moves, it is over. You can do whatever you wish, but that thing is over. Your best bet would be to get in harmony. But if you choose not to, and you can, then you will see the Red Sea part for some, invite you in, and that Red Sea will close on you too. And that one I declare in the pulpit, to those who are against God's will, no fist is big enough to block the sun. The second thing that we have, the second secret weapon that we have, are the people of God. Folk who know a thing is right in their hearts. They may not have all the words. They may not have this. They may not have all of the ideas down packed, but they've been given the gift of discernment, a gift that tells them this is wrong. I'm not going to participate in it. I'm going to do everything to make the acceptable year of the Lord. The people of God who are called upon at a time like this to bear witness, to say that those who were moaning and groaning for many years, who prayed for a day like this, their prayers have reached heaven and God has made the difference. And he's going to use people, everyday people. He will use the most flawed of people. I know. I look at him every day in the mirror. The most flawed of people that can possibly be. The least among you. Any of you. God could, if he can use me, he certainly can use you so much better. If he can use someone with so few talents and can move him so ahead, then imagine what he can do with you. People who would stand up and say, you know what? We're not going backwards. No, Mr. Trump, we're not going backwards. No, to whoever it is, we are not going backwards. We have paid too much. 50,000 New York troops died in the Civil War. Most of them white. Their death has to have some meaning too. They fought for an end to this stuff, this madness that we find ourselves in. This conversation must be getting old to you. It's certainly old to me. I don't want my sons and their sons and their sons to hold the same conversation. We have a chance to make America a better place. We don't have a right as Americans, as people of God, as people of just decency, not to do everything in our power to stand up and do something about it now. We all say, oh, I wasn't around in the slavery days. I would have done different. Okay. You're around now. You're around now. Will we be quiet now? Or will we, like Garrison, tell everybody, I don't care what the rest of you say and do, this thing has to stop, and it's going to stop now. And what better place to stop than in Rochester? You have a question.
I'll try my best.
Oh,
to
man,
do
when
as
you
quick
write it
as I
down, that
possibly
scares me.
can. The question I have is that the draft for the commission, is it available today? If not, when might it be available? And the other thing I stand up to say as I listen to some of the comments here in the audience today, please forgive me, I got a last-minute invitation to this. We went down this road with Eastman Kodak Corporation as a network, African Americans then. When I came to Rochester in '73, I did the same thing with the government in reference to the city of Rochester and Cornhill. So some of us been down the road. The most important thing is have a vision, a goal, stick with it, and realize it may not happen overnight. You got to be dedicated. And the other most important thing, hold people accountable.
Yes.
You got to hold them accountable. We have to hold them accountable. Wayne Turner speaking.
Now, I am trying to remember, your question was about the commission itself, I believe. The law is available online, of course. And that's a good place to start. You always need to see what was written, and that way you can see what's in it and sometimes see what's not in it. I will take it upon myself to make sure that the Reverend Doctor gets a copy of the law that was written, and that way, when you come to church, you could get a copy of it from her. That was an invitation. That was some folk have come with it. This sister over here actually, man, these folk in Rochester are serious. They come with the law. I wrote it, but I didn't read it yet. Actually, I wrote it, but there were one or two editors also afoot. But you have a question over here, too.
Yes, thank you. I agree with everything you said.
Then you're wrong. I don't agree with everything I say, sir.
But I'm going to sound like a Republican congressman.
Good.
When I point out that the national debt stands at $34.27 trillion, and the New York State debt is $166.51 billion as of 2022. So the question is, where's the money coming from?
Okay. It's a fair question. It is the question that has to be answered. Now, of course, that's not taking into account how much we are spending on welfare right now. The welfare budget of this state is enormous. Much of that can be addressed with that. I'm reminded of a couple of things. I'm reminded of the greatness of this country. When we turn our mind to something, we manage to get it done. I am reminded of the battle against the pandemic that we just gone through. That money seemed to have come from billions now, came from all over the place to deal with that question. You could look at the question of Ukraine and the monies that we are spending over Ukraine. Billions that we did not budget for. I think that word trillion is really more accurate than billions. So, where is it coming from? I actually have some ideas that will make it come from the 1% and not most of the people. In fact, anybody in here. I actually have some ideas of that. I'm not ready to turn to it now, but I am saying that when Germany found itself at the end of World War II, and they voted, and they were polls of the German people on the issue of reparations. And the majority of the German people, only 11% were in favor of reparations. 11%. Now, the recent polls are now up to 92%, and that says something good about the German people, that at least they understand that they needed to have done right with some folk such a great horror and crime. I just thinking of the horror that was inflicted upon my brothers and sisters makes me rage. The German people were forced to do right, and it's to their credit. I think that just as there are crimes against humanity, this is one of those crimes, sir. And crimes against humanity don't have a statute of limitations. If we could catch any of those Nazis today, bring them to jail. I don't care if they're 99.99.99. Send them up. 100 years. The crimes that they committed were so enormous that the world needs to stand up and say, you going up. If we should never stop looking for them. We should hunt them to the end of the earth. The same is true here. This is a crime against humanity. Humanity itself calls out for a change. We should not simply look at the question of dollars. We should look at the issue of justice. A question of justice. Yes, we have to be responsible towards an economy because we live in a real world, my friends. But at the same time, that must be balanced into a question of justice. And if you have to deal with both, find your way to justice. Find your way there. Don't, because it would be cheapest to say, if we're just talking about money, then we should do nothing. Absolutely nothing. It would make us monetarily rich, but spiritually poor. We'd be unfit to the founders of this country. I'm a patriot of the Samuel Adams School, of that school that was cheated out of the Constitution, but one step at a time, one conversation at a time. I'm a historian by training. So under those conditions, we have a great balance that we must strike. One way of the balance is a question of dollars and cents, and we have to keep our eye on that because we live in a real world. Another issue is the issue of justice. And I alluded to that the final result is probably going to be in the middle somewhere, where it will be as close to justice as we could get in New York State. It won't be justice as we preach from up here. Make my water fall. It won't be justice in that sense, but it will be significant, and it must be a game changer. Even more important than the dollars. More important than the dollars, sir, is we don't want to be here again. If we do this, we've got to do it one time so that we don't have to do this over and over and over again. That's, I would argue, more important than the money now is if we're making an investment in equality. Otherwise, we shouldn't do this. If we don't do something that changes the situation, then we should not do it. But if it does change it, then by the grace of God and everything that we hold holy, let's do it. You have a question.
Yeah. Thank you very much for being here, Senator Sanders, and for all this. I especially appreciate the focus on youth in the future. When you were here in October, you talked about your wish for a People's Commission to work in parallel to the formal commission.
Yes.
So to inform the formal commission and to kind of be a check and a balance on that formal commission. And I would love to see youth as part of that People's Commission. And could you update us on the progress of the People's Commission? All right, thank you.
The youth are already on it. They are not only on it, they have decided what they want to work on. Now, I might have wanted them to work on something else, but I'm not going to tell them that what's important to them is not. They are working on the issue of how much these college loans and how far behind they are, and that is as worthy. It's one of the ways of dealing with this. We are meeting. I'm issuing a call for the most serious among you. I promise you long hours and no pay. I promise no one will know your name. I promise that you will sit together over long periods of time arguing out things. I promise you a very tough road. I am not looking for everyone. I encourage you to disqualify yourself. If you are not willing to give that type of time and energy, if you're not willing to disagree without becoming disagreeable, if you can't turn to each other and instead of on each other, then this is not for you. I'm not interested if you're black or white. I am interested if you're a person of good character. If you genuinely want to see a change in this great country. We are working, and we're working on some of the hardest issues before that commission ever gets to it. We intend to solve some of these issues. The issue of where's the money coming from? Very worthy. It's a responsible question, and I appreciate it. We have to answer it. But I believe that right in this room, there's enough mind power to get the answer. I believe that it's in this room and rooms like this. I'm looking for the talented 10th. I'm looking for just one of you, just one or two, to gather with the 2 or 3 others. We are hard at work on these issues. We're not waiting until they all get together. We're not waiting until some glorious moment. We're not waiting. We want to be able to hand them and say, now you don't have to do this, but if you could do something smarter than this, this is good. If you could figure it out better than this, then we want that. But if you can't, here's a way out. Here's a way forward. And that's what we're working on. And we are 80 strong, and we represent several different organizations. Some of the offline, ask me who's in the room, and you'll be very proud of the people who are coming together. The best people that money can't buy. People that, somebody should give them all medals, but they won't. Instead, they'll be able to sit back and look at what happens and say, I played a very small role in that. Mine was a very small role. It wasn't the biggest, and there's no Medal of Honor for me, but that's my idea, and thank God for it. You have a question in the back. Sir?
Yes. As a 25-year-old black man, I was wondering piggyback off of what he asked, what can the youth do to contribute to helping the future generations?
Well,
because
after you, sir.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
Because as you were speaking, I was thinking of a quote that was said, if you're not part of the problem, you're part of the solution. So what can we do as the youth to be part of the solution?
Let's talk about what we could do in Rochester. Now, you could join with what we're doing because there's something magical afoot, and it's called Zoom. It means that a person can sit up here and participate in something down there. What a glorious world we find ourselves in. That means that you can be part of a body that is working on this, and some of the people working on this are calling in from Germany and some other places. Zoom, an amazing thing. What a day we live in. But even more important than that, it's time that we hit the highways and the byways, my friends. It's time that we take this conversation on the road. It's time that we go into the middle of the hood and the whole old-fashioned conversation. It's time that we go into the barber shops, to the beauty parlors, into the pool halls, into dens of one type or another, and we hold conversations with real people. Not that these folk are not real, but I'm talking about those real people. It's time that we go in and say, my friends, here's the new knowledge. Everything old must pass away. Here's the new knowledge. Here's what we're bringing. And we're going to meet, you know what we're going to meet. You're going to meet people, the skeptics of every different type. First, you're going to meet the three types of skeptics. First, you're going to meet the wise man. Oh my God, they're so wise. They know everything about everything and nothing about nothing. These wise men, oh, this is never going to happen. This can't happen based on this, this, and this. To them, we say you have the wisdom, the knowledge, and understanding, but you forgot the most important thing, and that's common sense. We must confront the wise men who are out there. Then we must confront the living dead. My Bible tells me that we're called upon to let the dead bury the dead. And in that, we're going to have to deal with the living dead. They're more dead than alive. They're more interested in what they can put into their mouths or whatever they can put into their pockets right this very second. Talk of the future and talk of future generations is wasted on them. Now, Malcolm had the ability to raise the dead, and Martin Luther had the ability to raise the dead. I sadly, the good Lord has not given that to me yet. I do have the ability to put some more life in the living, however. And we need to go out there into the highways and the byways. Maybe I'll change from this suit, maybe I won't. And have real conversations with real people. Then the third type of skeptic that we're going to meet, of course, are going to be the hustlers. What's in it for them? How are they going to take your noble thing and make $1? How are they going to monetize our children's future for themselves? And we're going to have to tell them in no uncertain terms that this is not for you, and this thing we're talking about is holy. And if you are not prepared to clean yourself up, then you should not be anywhere near this. This is beyond simply a question of a good conversation. This is our birthright. This is for all of those people that were smarter than anybody in this room, probably smarter than all of us put together, and couldn't, just prayed and cried out for a God who seemed not to hear them. This one is for them. And like Garrison, we're not going to back up an inch on this one. We can't do it. I'm not going to look at Fannie Lou Hamer. Oh, I wish y'all knew who she was. One of our greatest leaders. I'm not going to look her in the face and say, you did so much with so much against you, and with so little against me, I collapsed. I'm not going to look at Sojourner. I'm not going to look at William Lloyd. I'm not going to look at John Brown. I'm not going to look at all these people on the day when I pass on and say, it was tough. It was rough. No. As Fannie Lou Hamer said, she said, she may fail and she may fall, but she will fall falling forward. So what we offer the young is to rejoin your birthright, to stop seeing yourself as you created yourself, that you are part of a whole, of a magnificent whole, of something glorious, something that kept marching no matter what, that everything was thrown at them and they rose. That's what we offer the young, and we offer it and say, now come time to take your place and end this madness. You have the ability to end this madness. This is done for you. I just said everybody over 65 will get some customers, some small amount of money and sent on about their way. I am over 65. We lead from the front. We're Marines. Come join us. Come put your shoulder to the wheel of history and move this thing. Move it in a way that would be pleasing to the ancestors. Move it in a way that generations yet to come will speak of you with pride. Come move this thing. Come join us. We're in motion. Ma'am.
Hi, Senator Sanders. Thanks so much for coming to help us with understanding this whole issue of racism and reparations and what we need to do. I want to talk to you about and ask you a question about how is your commission going to work on dismantling the systems that keep racism in place that are often systemic and manipulated? We have very good examples in our history with this government. At the end of slavery, there was illegal sharecropping. Then there was Jim Crow that black people had to endure. After Jim Crow with civil rights, there were all kinds of new laws that were created, separate but equal, eminent domain, terrorism in the black community. And I can go on with voting rights today, where we have to take tests and polling places are being shut down to prevent us from voting. Could you help us understand what impact the money will have if these systems remain in place? Particularly because you're a banking person, the banking redlining still exists today. We all know, even in this community, that if you own a home and you go to get a loan to fix that home and you're black, it's unlikely you're going to get the loan. But the minute you move out and the white person moves in, they get the loan and then they can fix the house. So I want to know, as an individual citizen, how to not be disappointed by this new effort of reparations, of giving dollars that may be spent wisely or not, or may have a system already structured before the dollars are given to take the dollars back and take back the power. Thank you.
A worthy question. A worthy question must have a worthy response, or should have a worthy response. I pray that my response will be as worthy as I can make it. Where do you start? I guess we'll start with the top. We'll start by saying that I've been taught that I don't have to have all of the answers, that when I go into a court of law, that I don't have to have all of the answers, that the answers will be given to me. I believe that God Himself will inspire people at a time like this to come up with these answers. I believe that the answer is in groups like this. I also believe that my Bible teaches me to be as cunning as a snake, but as gentle. Now watch, what scripture is that? Stop it. But as gentle as a dove. I believe that we ain't no idiots either. We understand. I'm a historian. I specialize in American history. I know this place well. Sometimes I know it better than it knows itself. I've had to. I survive. We are chess players too. Some could argue we may be some of the best chess players in the world because we're still alive. There are many, Martin Luther King, there are many difficult days ahead. There are many difficult days that we're going to have. There are rivers that we have yet to cross. The tide will always be against us. It will never be fair. However, we too can read and learn from history May I remind you of the Freedmen's Bank? If you speak of banking, then we need another one. We need one that we control, a Freedmen's Bank that we control. That's part of the solution that I would envision. We need to control access to capital. Some of whatever is generated must be in something safeguarded by good people, grounded in morality and grounded in economics. Understand Wall Street and other streets. For those who are into that stuff, we may be talking of a type of venture capitalism, or perhaps we are speaking of, what is those fund? A sovereign wealth fund. There are many ideas that we can have here. We're not babes in the woods. We're not without. We are finally at a place where we can play chess too. And we say, in the words of those immortal philosophers, Public Enemy, bring the noise. Bring it. We ready. Bring the noise. Is there another question?
Yes, I have a question. Can I make
Oh,
an
no,
addition-
no.
Can I make an additional
I'm in
comment?
trouble now.
Can I make an additional comment to the question about systems before I ask
Absolutely.
my question? So earlier in my talk, I talked about we do have the power to dismantle systems, right? That if most of our systems were not created with people of color at the table, then we need to call for new blueprints. Locally, I have called with our team for a new policing blueprint, for example. And what it requires is that we get behind that and recreate the kind of blueprint that brings people to the table so we can actually have what we call public safety and not a slave patrol model of policing communities. And if we're able to take on that Goliath and we do it together, then it'll make it much easier to do it with other systems where people of color were not at the table. So that's one thing that we can do. And we will, if you go to our website, we will post that so you can look at that policing blueprint and support it and call for it. I think we need new blueprints. If people of color were not at the table, then they're not designed to work for us. And that's why you get so much resistance in the systems. If that's helpful. So my question is, the entire, when I hear about how we're gonna pay for it, whenever the country wants to go to war, they never ask how we're gonna pay for it. In fact, this country wouldn't even have money if it weren't for enslaved Africans. The entire economic system in this country was built on the backs of 400 years of slavery that Black people were left out of in terms of equity, access, fairness, opportunity to thrive, and resources. So the anxiety of how we are going to pay out of the system that they lifted on the backs of Black people seems troubling to me and out of sync. And I know it's a good question, but I think it's the wrong question. I think the question is, when are we going to do it, right? Because they're the ones who gave us the money to do anything that we're currently doing. It was built on their backs. And so when you talk about birthright, you're absolutely right. Like it is our birthright. And so I guess the question that I have is, what conversation should we be having with people in our families, people in our communities, people who are struggling with this concept, who do not understand that history from the place for which that question comes?
Well, first, I must commend all of you good people in Rochester again, and you, Reverend Doctor, for bringing us together. You guys have gone through a great length to get me here. It just shows your commitment to make sure that a truth is told in this community. I apologize if this is the best truth that I can tell, but I'm going to tell it nonetheless in the best manner that I can. Now, We need to wage struggle. Drop the mic on it. We need to wage a holy struggle, starting with our family. Now, you know and I know there's a bunch of people in everybody's family that does not believe that, I mean, they don't even believe it should be done, less long how to get it done. So we've got a careful struggle that we need to do. Can I encourage you to wage it, but can I encourage you to wage it with love? Love. Not with hatred, not with vengeance, not with any of these things. Because if you believe that you're right, then act like it. And hear them. Hear them first. St. Augustine. Hear them first. Let's hear what they're saying first. And then let's work with them to get them to where they need to be. If we believe that we're right, we encourage them to come to places like this. My conversation goes to just about anybody who won't run quick enough. I will be in places with this same conversation where the next black person is probably 30 miles away. And I'm going to tell the truth in season or out of season. But I'm going to do it with love. I'm going to do it with utmost respect. You see, I actually love the American people. Not scared of the American people. I've been around, raised with white people. I know of your horror, but I can tell you of your beauty too. I can say this, when you finally get it, it takes some time. Lord, it takes some time. But when you finally get it, you don't move from it. At your best, quick story I'll tell you about white people. I got good stories. At the 1920, height of the Klan has 5 million members in uniform, and only God knows how many outside of uniform. Down in Houston, Texas, they're having a bit, when you know it's not a good place to be in 1920, it's not a good place, probably not a good place today. But I didn't say that. They're having a big Klan rally. They got 20,000 Klansmen, and the speaker is late. This actually happened. And the guy's killing time, and he just jumps up before the audience and says, "Is there one person in here who wants to say something against the Klan?" Everybody laughs. Lo and behold, a white man strides up the audience, comes up on the stage, and for the next 15 minutes, tells them everything about them not being of God, not being of this, not being of everything. Now that is courage. We don't even know the guy's name. Go a step further. I can tell you about white people. Everybody sees the picture of Rosa Parks on the bus, and that's good. But there's a guy behind her in that picture. There's a white guy sitting behind her. He just happened to be a salesman, Jewish guy, from New York, who just happened to have been on the bus. And he stayed on the bus to make sure that this woman stays alive. And that's why you're hearing of Rosa Parks, because normally they just beat the poor woman into submission, into a puddle. Oh, I could tell you about the beauty of white people. When y'all get it, it is over. It is over. Racism cannot stand when y'all wake up. When y'all do, it is over. Until then, folk like me will be your John the Baptist. We're going to be in a wilderness declaring that there's a better way and a better America. Now, we may have a head handed to us. Oh, y'all don't know the Bible. I wish you did. If they knew the Bible. John the Baptist was beheaded. We may have a head handed to us, but that's all right too. That's just part of a historic process. I am just part of a historic process. Whatever it happens, I'm in the hands of God. It does not matter. There are things beyond us. It does not matter. This is why I laugh so much and I enjoy myself, because who knows how long I will have. It does not matter. They can't stop this process. You know why? Because we got young men sitting in the back, slowly getting it, slowly figuring this thing out. I'm looking at the future, and it looks good. More questions.
Senator Sanders, I have a question. My name is Lydia Rodriguez, and my question is...
Now, much louder, Miss Lady.
Oh, as an Afro-Latino woman...
Absolutely.
Whose ancestors were stolen from their land to serve as slaves and indentured servants in the Caribbean, mainly Puerto Rico, where do my people stand in regards to reparations, and what would that look like?
Well, reparations is a worldwide movement. Some of the leaders of this movement are part of the CARICOM. The Caribbean nations have an organization called CARICOM, and they are some of the leaders of this. In fact, they had a few words for the king and the queen fairly recently, and have made them feel very unwelcome for whatever reason. So in this worldwide movement for reparations, you may find that reparations greets you at the point of departure. Was it Panama or was it Dominican Republic?
I'm from Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico? PR? Okay. Wow, now Puerto Rico is a very interesting place. There are several groups that need to do reparations there, including the U.S., but one story at a time. It's a worldwide movement, and the UN has recently moved on it on a worldwide basis. In fact, they did a study which is really brilliant. Well, anyway, we need to trace you a little bit more and find where were you born and things of that nature. I don't mind meeting you right after this and tell you and give you as many directions as I could. All right.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
I agree that we can come up with the funding. It's really a matter of priorities, and this is a debt that we owe, so there's no reason that this wouldn't be to the top of the list. But my question was, you speak about like home ownership, individual home ownership or individual business ownership. I wonder if there's any consideration of support for more cooperatively owned things. I know there's been a lot of work in Jackson, and I've been studying, I'm interested in cooperatives, so I've been studying Black cooperation and the history of that with mutual aid and cooperatives and a lot of the banks and the insurance companies. I'm just curious about that.
Cooperation, co-ops, and condos for that matter, are going to be some of the leading methods that we can use. I'm giving you a very abridged version of a conversation. And how this one will play itself out is going to be amazing. I mentioned Fannie Lou Hamer. She is famous for many different things, including coming up with the Sunflower Cooperative. And the co-op movement will be one of the things, because we are trying to create group wealth, not simply individual wealth. We are trying to figure out how to move a group forward and not simply as an individual here or there. So stay tuned. It's one of the, and we are very familiar with what's going on in Jackson and keeping our eye on it. It's very interesting. With all of the challenges that they're having, may they break free of the state government, which is trying to strangle that bold experiment.
You
Sir.
mentioned the king and queen. I was thinking the Gang of Five basically created slavery. The United Kingdom, France, Spain, Portugal, and the Netherlands. And what are their roles in all of this?
Well, there is a worldwide battle, and a accounting firm. Well, let's do it this way. We've reached to such a level of sophistication in this battle that we are now quantifying. It's no longer just saying, oh, something should, nebulous stuff, which the heart speaks. Now, the mind is engaged also, and we are quantifying. The UN has recently quantified and named those very countries, and maybe one or two others, and have said how much each country should pay for reparations. So this is an amazing day that we live in. And incidentally, the firm that did the study was a white firm. The study was worth at least $6 million. They didn't charge a dime for it. When we finally talk of the history, this is why you can't really separate white history from black history or black from white. Every part that America moves forward, white folk have played their part. Every part. And when America doesn't move forward, it's usually because white people are not playing their part. When America doesn't move forward, there's some folk who are trying to hold it up, hold up their end. We need to, Malcolm X taught us, Malcolm X, much maligned. I am a political disciple of Malcolm X. But you need to read the whole book. If you don't, you'll be a racist. But if you read the whole book, you would discover he's one of the most incredible anti-racists that you'll find. Malcolm X expressed one of his regrets. When he was in the NOI, the Nation of Islam, a white woman came to him and said, Malcolm, you're right. There's been much that was wrong. I want to help. How can I help? And Malcolm said, there's nothing you can do. He regretted that a great deal. Later, he said what he should have said. He should have said, you need to go and work with your community, not mine. You need to go to white people and work with white people and move them forward. The problem here is not going to be the black community. Oh, there's a certain amount of confusion in the black community. There's a certain amount of arguments and all, but every study says that reparations is chosen by around 80%. We can argue what it means, how it means. Those are worthy arguments. But in the white community, only 22% of the white community is in favor of reparations. But may I remind you, that's double the amount that was in favor in Germany of reparations. Only 11% were in favor in Germany of doing reparations. And they have come a long way. And this country has come a long way. The studies are also showing, the polls, that the white youth are for it and growing in larger and larger numbers. That the numbers are in our favor. That whether, like Moses, a hard-headed generation must die out, doesn't matter. The mountaintop has been joined. I don't want to say that because I'm the last person who said that. Well, the mountaintop has been looked at. We're going to get to a place. America is going to get to a better place. Whether we can take everybody with us remains to be seen. Whether we can take generations that have grown used to being stubborn and won't move, that remains to be seen. But the youth are going that way. And when they take their natural place, you can't stop them. Every revolution begins with the youth. Intellectuals have it, but when the youth take it to heart, nothing can stop them because they don't know what's impossible. Some could say they're foolish. We older people, we can say we're so smart. We are. We know what's impossible, and they don't, the youth. And you know what? That's why they can do the impossible, and we can't. Because we're too busy saying it's impossible, and they're too busy saying, let's get it done yesterday. This is where y'all are going. And it'll take some time. There'll be this fire that has been lit generations ago has reached a part where it cannot be stopped anymore. This brush fire is now raging. It is open. We can use it to warm ourselves. We could use it to build, to cook food and do better. Or we can use it to fight amongst ourselves and to perish as fools. I encourage, get ready, this is called a ending. You ready? I'm going to show you. Or we can perish as fools. I encourage us, I beseech you to find where you supposed to be in this struggle. First and foremost, go into your prayer closet and hear from God. You need to go there and pray. And don't listen for no big old something. Listen for that still voice, still quiet voice. The one that speaks to you. The one that sometimes we try to drink too much to get away from. Smoke a little of this or that. Nobody in here, of course. We try to still that voice. But there's that voice that speaks to you in the midnight hour when there's nobody around and says, you know, something's wrong here and we need to make it better. And something that tells you you have a role to play. And if you find that place, then first you work in your family. Try to work close by and get your family. Then you try to get some friends. Then you try to see if your block association. Then you go a step further and bring it to a neighborhood association. You might find the body of Christ. You might find a church that tries to act like the body of Christ. Under those conditions, you join, and we keep joining. We turn to each other and not on each other. But I end by saying this, my friends. We are going someplace great. It's going to cost all of us something. All will pay some will pay all. But it doesn't matter. In historical sense, it doesn't matter. What matters is where America is going, and you have a role in it. Some say this is the age of Trump. Some say, you're talking this with Trump? He wants to get rid of affirmative action and everything else. Okay. The best defense is a good offense. Anybody who believes that you can be quiet and don't say anything in this deluge, in this tsunami of madness, then you neither read the Bible nor you're reading history. We are going someplace and it will be great. You're seeing signs of it by looking at your neighbors here. Just that you could come together on this issue. We don't have to agree with every word. We have to agree that there's a better America and that we want to be part of it. And we'll play whatever role that we can to do it. Because ultimately, at the end of this one, we are going from welfare to our fair share. We're going from charity to parity. God bless you all.
I was going to conclude.
We're going to just close out. So as I want to thank Senator Sanders again, as he was talking, I don't know about you, but I felt like God was speaking to our hearts, right? This is really a pivotal moment in our lives. And whenever I get that sense, I always find myself going to God and saying, teach me. If this is the moment that you're calling on us to do, I need more teaching. I need you to show me. And so in one of those moments that I was having, I wrote this song that I could always return to invite God to teach me. And I'm going to have you join me in this. We're going to close out with this. And the words are simple. Here's your part. In your mercies, oh God, your mercy, oh God, in your mercy, oh God, teach me. In your mercy, oh God, come on. Your mercy, oh God, in your mercy, oh God, teach me to be more loving, oh God, more forgiving, oh God, to be your heartstring, oh God, teach me to be more loving, oh God, more forgiving, oh God, to be your heartstring, oh God, teach me. I want to be kind and compassionate. Put your hands together. Just as you are. I want to be gracious and merciful. Just as you are. I want to be kind and compassionate. Just as you are. I want to be gracious and merciful. Just as you are. For in your mercies, oh God, your mercy, oh God, for in your mercy, oh God, teach me to be more loving, oh God, more forgiving, oh God, to be justice-filled, oh God, teach me. I want to be kind and compassionate, just as you are. I want to be gracious and merciful, just as you are. I want to be kind and compassionate, just as you are. I want to be gracious and merciful, just as you are. For in your mercy, oh God, your mercy, oh God, for in your mercy, oh God, teach me. May God bless you. May God continue to teach you. And may we walk this journey together, not only to push forth reparations, but parity and equity and justice and humanity, because this is our charge and this is our call. So let's go from this place and have those conversations that we're supposed to have. And if you've purchased the VIP reception is through this door and then up the hall. So we invite you to join us for the VIP reception.